welcome back to the channel, y'all. It's GBTV. We got another different video today. It's for a different show. Even though it's not anime, I still consider it anime. It's Avatar: The Last Airbender. What if Aang never ran away? Alternative timeline history. So, for those who don't know, I did do an Avatar: The Last Airbender reaction. That video got blocked, copyright blocked, which makes zero freaking sense because the video that I was reacting to was a compilation list, and that video's still up, but the video that I reacted to of it is removed. Maybe they got permission from the company to do a video on it. I'm guessing. So yeah, so let's do this video, which I doubt would be blocked, hopefully. But this is from Hello Future Me, and I think this is something a lot of Last Airbender fans have thought about. Like, what if he never ran away? He'd probably be dead. Let's be honest, Aang would probably be dead if he never ran away. So it's a smart thing that he did run away, I guess. But really, is it a smart thing? Because if he had died, the next Avatar would have been reincarnated immediately afterwards. So I mean, think of what you will. That's one thing we all are thinking about. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. Let me know what you think about my Avatar: The Last Airbender reactions. Let me know if you guys want to see more videos of me reacting to these type of things and giving my input on it. This is one of my favorite shows from back when I was a kid, man. I haven't watched Korra. Probably not gonna watch Korra. Who knows? Let's get on with the video. Let's do it.
The Avatar will be sent away to the Eastern Air Temple.
Hey, what's up, Furious? I've always been a fan of alternate history and exploration of fake real history, but let's take it to the next level, an exploration of fake history. What if Aang never ran away? What if Aang was never frozen for those 99 years? How would the 100-Year War have turned out? Let's talk our way through two alternate timelines. In this first alternate timeline, it could have gone badly, but it's important to get some context first. It was the year 0 AG, just months before the U.S.A genocide. If Aang remained in one of the 4 air temples as
The Avatar will be sent away to the
He would have
Eastern Air
died.
Temple to complete his training.
then come that fateful night, there's a high chance that Aang would have been captured or killed during the assault.
More likely, they would have captured him so that he wouldn't get reincarnated, because what their goal was to prevent the Avatar from showing up and messing up their plan. So they probably would have captured him. Did they know who the Avatar was? I don't believe they did. I'm not sure if they did know.
The assault being the Fire Nation equivalent of Blitzkrieg.
Yeah, basically
It may
Blitzkrieg.
have been the case that the Fire Nation knew where the Avatar was meant to be during Sozin's
Ah.
comet, or as it was known then, the Great Comet. After all, taking down the Avatar was Sozin's primary objective with the attack, as he viewed it as
The Fire Nation's greatest threat.
after his experiences with Roku. In this alternate timeline, Aang is seen to wait
Roku fucked them up, boy. he don't want to see another Roku pull up again.
to train
At the Eastern Air Temple.
And during the series, Aang actually spent some time there with Guru Patik, and there's something interesting to note about what happened to it during the genocide. It's the only temple with a lot of structural damage done to it, signs of artillery fire and heavy assault. While the other 8 temples are damaged and aged, they're still largely intact.
Oh
Whereas
yeah.
The Eastern Air Temple has roofs that have collapsed, the walls have crumbled, and
Yeah.
the towers of the temple themselves have been entirely destroyed, which is not the case for any of the other air temples. And the fact that the Fire Nation focused so much of their firepower on
So they have
Eastern Air
intel
Temple
knowing that he
alone
was there.
may have been because they had some foreknowledge that the Avatar was meant to
How
be.
did they know
Now,
that?
I've read that some people think this is the case because in the Avatar card game, there's a character called Afiko the Betrayer, a southern air temple air nomad who helps the Fire Nation plan their attacks on the temple.
Oh, what a piece of shit.
Air temple, there's a good chance that Afiko would have known where Aang was sent at the time. But to be clear, this card game is not canon. If there was someone who helped the Fire Nation coordinate and plan their attack, we don't know who they are. In this alternate timeline, Aang is sent away to train there, and it remains true that the heaviest assault by the Fire Nation is on the Eastern Air Temple. It's here, during the assault, that the Avatar state would come into play. But it's important to remember that this is only a few months after Aang was told that he was the Avatar, meaning it's likely that Aang would have around the same level of control of it as we saw he had in the first episode. It's more instinctual than anything else. There we saw that if forced into the Avatar state, it made Aang aggressive. If he uses it during the assault, it will not be to flee to safety, but
It'll
to
be to
stand
kill.
his ground and fight. But it wouldn't last for long and would leave him weak and nearly unconscious. Left vulnerable in this alternate world, even with the Avatar state protecting him, it's likely that Aang would have been captured because...
See, if you die, you'll just be reborn, and the Fire Nation will have to begin its search for the Avatar all over again.
Yep.
Or even worse, killed in the Avatar state, permanently ending the cycle.
Oh no, what man can stop the Fire Lord now?
Not a man, my dear botanical nuisance, but a cat. And the best damn cat you've ever seen. In the case that Aang somehow escaped the attack, as we learn that some nomads did in the short comic Relics, it's likely that history would have played out much like the second alternate timeline. Because what if things happened a little bit differently? While it may appear likely that Aang would get caught up in the genocide, there's a small moment in the episode The Storm that shows us he may have been able to avoid it entirely. In this second alternate reality, Aang and Gyatso ran away from the air temples together.
Oh.
After Gyatso is informed that the two of them will be separated and Aang will be sent to the Eastern Air Temple to complete his training, Aang leaves a note, runs away, and flies into the storm. But Gyatso goes to his room afterwards and he says,
Aang, I'm not going to let them take you away from me.
he went to Aang
Oh,
during the night when
yeah.
the rest of the temple was asleep, and I think he did that all for a reason. In this alternate time,
He wanted to
the two
leave
waited
with
for
him.
a night with weather where they could safely leave, and they departed for the world. For the months following, the war was ever approaching, but they were none the wiser. Gyatso would continue to train Aang and teach him the ways of,
When he gets his butt kicked at Pai Sho.
all the while ensuring that he still had the opportunity to be a kid. It's likely that they would have taken up residence in the Earth Kingdom. It's easier for them to blend in and hide, and it would
And
also
he would have
make
met
Aang not
King
feel
Boomy.
pressured to learn the elements until he was ready.
All I
Yeah.
want is what is best for him.
Sozin's hunt for the Avatar begins. In this timeline, it's a darker story of survival, escape, and secrecy. When the 100-Year War begins with the air nomad genocide, the two are left broken, devastated, and alone in the world. But Aang is not the last airbender. Then in the summer of that year, when the Fire Nation is at its most powerful, it begins its coordinated expansion into the Western Earth Kingdom. Yet while in our fake real timeline,
I wasted the remainder of my life searching in vain.
in our fake timeline, Aang would eventually be found, or at least he would come out of hiding. Slowly but surely, word would spread of two airbenders who escaped the genocide, and Aang and Gyatso would try and connect and find others who survived. We know from the comics that the Fire Nation used air nomad relics to try and lure survivors into traps throughout the Earth Kingdom, but Gyatso, knowing the danger that Aang as the Avatar was in, would be unlikely to fall for these. As time went on, Aang would continue to train with
Oh,
Gyatso.
so what they did? Oh my goodness, that's some slick shit right there. So what they basically would do is, if an air nomad found that, they'd be like, "Oh my god, there are other nomads here. Let me take refuge." And the whole time, it was just a trap to. Damn, the Fire Nation was on one, man. They were on one.
But even as the Earth Kingdom lost territory in the early parts of the war, he would not get involved. Gyatso was not against Aang embracing his role as the Avatar, but he wanted him to adjust and grow into it over time. Because of this, much of the early war would happen in the same way. The Fire Nation would have many of these same victories, because Gyatso understood that A, intervening too early would likely lead to failure, and B, it would be bad for Aang personally, forcing him to feel the weight and responsibility of the world on his shoulders when he wasn't ready. Sozin would still
And he wasn't
follow
ready
the plan
during
circa
the
10 AD,
series.
And the Earth Kingdom would be dealt a major blow with the fall of Taku, an important trading center and one of the few large cities outside of Ba Sing Se. It would still fall in much the same way. Now in the finale of the show, Team Avatar, album out 2019 for just $69.99 with such classic hits as
Leaves from the vine,
Oh, come on, bro.
falling so slow.
there's a squirrel in my eye.
God
But
damn
Aang
it, bro.
decides that.
I was actually gonna wait to fight the Fire Lord until after it came.
Now Aang was eventually forced to face Fire Lord Ozai during the comet, but in this alternate timeline, that pressure isn't there.
Yep.
He doesn't have a deadline. He has time to train. And given that Sozin, after all, was one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful firebender in the world at the time,
Yeah.
he would want to. As a believer in tradition and the importance of proper avatar training, Aang would eventually choose to travel to the water tribes to master waterbending. Interestingly, the Fire Nation focused almost entirely on the Western Front in the Earth Kingdom.
Wait, wasn't
the water tribes
wasn't the cycle of
only
Avatar?
on the focused powerful, if not the most powerful firebender in the world at the time, he would want to. As a believer,
Wasn't the cycle of the Avatar? Yeah. So like after Roku was Aang, and the next one would be water. Then Earth. Did the elements of the Avatar follow a cycle? What? Wait, was it No, because when what was that dude's name? I don't think they follow a cycle. Nah, I'm pretty sure it doesn't follow a cycle because it was air, water, earth, fire. Wait, it was. What the fuck? Wait. Look. Yeah, wasn't so. It was. I think it does follow that the reincarnation because you got Seto fire, Yang Chen was air, right? Then it was Karuk, then Kyoshi. Oh yeah, Kyoshi was an earth. For some reason, I was thinking Kyoshi was an airbender. She was an earthbender. Then it was Roku. Then it was Aang. Then Korra. And then the next avatar is going to be an earthbender. And the next one after that's going to be a fire. Okay, so it does follow. Yeah, it follows that cycle. Okay. I don't know why I thought that it didn't follow that cycle.
in tradition and the importance of proper avatar training, Aang would eventually choose to travel to the water tribes to master waterbending. Interestingly, the Fire Nation focused almost entirely on the Western Front in the Earth Kingdom for the first part of the war. The water tribes weren't directly involved. It was in fear of retaliation that the water tribes stayed out of the war for as long as they could. They became isolationist, but they couldn't escape it forever. We know that
it was over 60 years ago when the raid started.
It wasn't until the year 40 AG, nearly halfway through the 100-Year War, that the Southern Water Tribe actually came under attack. In this timeline, the Southern Water Tribe is still a thriving waterbending city, and likewise, it's implied in the show that the Northern Water Tribe wasn't drawn into the war until 85 or more years ago. So they were attacked far before the Southern Water Tribe ever was. Being by far the safest option outside the eye of the Fire Nation, the earsiest way to remain secret, and
he would have pulled up
South himself, Aang would have chosen to train with the Southern Water Tribe, rather than the Northern one. Eventually, Aang would need to master earthbending and firebending. While it's impossible to say who Aang would have trained with in this alternate reality, it's likely that he wouldn't have been as good an earthbender as he was in the show.
Because Toph was a master.
Because
your earthbending could still use some work too.
I mean,
how to earthbend in
Toph,
a way that no other person
you're a genius.
have.
Yeah.
In this timeline, he may be able to throw rocks and keep a stance, but there's no way that he would be doing this.
Yeah, using the senses like that. That came in clutch. That came in super fucking clutch.
Likewise, without Zuko, there's no way that he could have learned lightning redirection. These two abilities turned out to be crucial during his fight with Ozai, and would likely also be crucial during a fight with, say, Sozin or Zulon. Lightning is essentially a one-hit kill that Sozin probably would have been able to use as well. That said, having years rather than months to master airbending, waterbending, firebending, and earthbending would overall make him more proficient with the elements in this timeline. It would no longer be true that
if Aang tries to fight the Fire Lord right now, he's gonna lose.
Instead, he would stand a chance, and depending on how long mastering the elements took Aang, the political state of the Fire Nation may be important to deciding when he took down the Fire Lord. Zulon was born in the year 0 AG, making him ripe for the position of Fire Lord when Sozin died in the year 20 AG. It's at this point, with the change in leadership, that military advisors may urge Aang to attack, that his moment may have come. If Aang mastered the elements and killed Fire Lord Sozin before the year 20 AG, then Zulon would have easily ascended to the throne and the war would have likely continued. But if he kills Zulon after he ascends to the throne, then there would be no royal heirs to take his place, and the Fire Nation may fall apart.
Wait, but that means That means there will be no Iroh. There will be no Zuko. Damn.
But how would this battle go down? An all-out assault like originally planned in the Day of Black Sun would likely be impossible without the eclipse, and the fact that the Fire Nation at this point is at arguably its most powerful, yet with full command of the Avatar state.
It don't matter. That
Wisely
he would have.
try to avoid a direct confrontation.
He would have bodied him,
but it
even
would
with the
eventually
comet.
come, and Aang would face him. Interestingly, Aang faced a lot of internal strife nearing the end of the series around whether or not he should kill the Fire Lord. Aang was alone in his beliefs and being pressured on all sides to kill. Nobody around him understood his air nomad values, and even the previous air nomad avatar, Yang Chen, told him
to kill.
Selfless duty calls you to sacrifice your own spiritual needs.
But in this timeline,
Yang Chen.
He would have Gyatso there.
You ain't as perfect as people want you to think you are.
It's likely that Aang would have staunchly stuck by his nomad values in his fight.
He would have used energy bending.
Though whether or not Gyatso was truly about the whole non-violence and non-killing thing is kind of up for debate, given how many dead bodies we find around him in the Southern Air Temple.
Yo, he was bodying them boys.
These guys were all comet-powered firebenders.
And he bodied. Oh my god! Hell yeah! He bodied all those comet, Sozin comet boosted firebenders. I think someone said like they're like 1,000 times stronger than what they usually are. And this man Gyatso sold all of them. This man Monk Gyatso is a menace.
To kill the Fire Lord. Though, like with all ideological convictions, it's one thing to preach them when you're safe, and another thing to preach them when you're being attacked with 100 comet-powered firebenders. In the former scenario, being a fully realized avatar of age, Aang would likely kill the Fire Lord within the first 2 decades of the 100-Year War, ending it and forcing their capitulation. But in this scenario, there's no individual like Zuko to ascend to the throne, leaving the Fire Nation in a precarious political position. It's likely that, like in many post-war scenarios like this, a puppet government would be set up, and they would be forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. I mean, the peace treaty. But in the treaty often proves to be difficult, let alone keeping a stable government in place. In the latter scenario,
it'll just be a band-aid.
Zulon would be subdued and imprisoned, but alive, and remain a threat personally. In the comics, we learn that insurgent groups like the new U.S.A. Society persisted and rebelled, attempting to restore their imprisoned monarch to the throne. The Fire Nation was always fiercely patriotic, at no point more than at the beginning of the war, and it's likely that a similar situation would arise with a new Azulon or a new Sozin Society.
Yeah, someone would have just popped up.
Difficult to subdue and control. But there are 2 other incredibly important consequences to this timeline. Firstly, with the war ending far earlier in this timeline, the world begins to advance at a far slower rate, both technologically and culturally. See, war drives innovation as the opposing sides try to outdo one another, and the 100-Year War is no different. It was only the pressures of the 100-Year War that led to the development of mobile steam engines, which are incredibly important industry-wise, as well as things like submarines or hot air balloons, which would eventually lead to flight. On a different level though, it was only the long-term mixing of both Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom peoples over the 100-year period that led to a distinct, separate, multicultural society that we see in Republic City and the other colonies. Now, while there are colonies in this timeline, their longevity isn't guaranteed, and they haven't been around for quite as long, meaning that it's less likely that they would have developed that feeling of a separate, distinct cultural identity. It was this cultural integration that we see led to revolutionary techniques in industry and in manufacturing as they combined the bending abilities from multiple nations. It made it more efficient and assisted in mass production. But in this timeline, the opportunities for that would be very limited. There would still be this distinct feeling of them being 4 nations with a low degree of cultural integration. With manufacturing being slower,
wow, this man really bringing in a history lesson.
Slow down as a whole.
Yeah.
The King would likely still be stuck in that kind of feudal age for a lot longer. And
the water tribe would be hella isolated.
Further war. The 100-Year War was so devastating that the nations put in place measures to make sure that a war like that could never happen again.
And they probably, I'm just gonna say, they would probably it's the same way how the United States, how hard they hit Japan, so that Japan would still be repairing itself even to this day. They probably do the same thing to the Fire. They will cripple the Fire Nation so much that they will never try to rise to power like that again. Because the Fire Nation is the one nation that decided to break the status quo.
Again, This is similar to what happened in Europe after World War II, and it's true that European countries tend to have a general aversion to involvement in war, at least directly, and certainly not against one another. If the war doesn't last as long, then this sort of sentiment is far less likely to develop. It would just be looked back on in history as another failed war, not the war that defined their era. In this timeline, the world isn't as shaken, meaning the socio-political powers that be at the time wouldn't see any need for any real examination of the issue. And because of this, the four nations, including the Fire Nation, would be far less likely to develop any sort of reluctance to go to war with one another in the future. There's no guarantee the Fire Nation would be saying,
"The Fire Nation has spent too much of its history fighting nonsense wars."
Coupled with the lack of cultural integration in this timeline, there would still be strong divisions along the lines of national identity, which inevitably leads to further tensions. And where these tensions go, we can't say. They would be there.
Bruh, all this could have happened just because dude decided not to run away.
It'd be like the 10 or 20-year war, which isn't nearly as impressive. But an interesting question that needs to be addressed is, what happens to the Fire Nation colonies following the war? This was addressed with the Harmony Restoration movement in the comic books The Promise. But it's important to remember that even at this point, some of these colonies would have been there for 40 or 50 years. That's plenty of time for a whole generation of people to grow up there. However, it's still likely that governance would be handed over almost entirely to the Earth Kingdom. Though this said, history has a long record of invaded countries treating established citizens of a foreign power in the post-war scenario pretty terribly. In this timeline, the Earth Kingdom would demand retribution following the war, and with no strong Fire Nation central power or a heavily involved water tribe to moderate the peace treaty, it would mean that the likelihood of expulsion or persecution of Fire Nation citizens, either at the hands of the government or the people, and the escalating tensions that would lead to, only heightens. In this timeline,
from the sound of it, the Earth Nation would be the one that would go into war.
Are likely never taken. Because of this, Harmer is unlikely to have discovered bloodbending. But another point is,
wow.
The Dai Li grew largely in power during the 100-Year War. They were powerful beforehand, but they really thrived on the paranoia that the war created. Without it going on for so long, it's likely that they wouldn't have gotten as far. Beyond this, it's difficult to say, but let me know what you think would have happened in this war down in the comments below. It's a question that the community has long pondered, and these are just my thoughts on some fake history. That's all from me, and if you like what I do and would like to support me and our supreme leader Mishka, then Patreon is definitely the way to do that. Thank you so much to those of you who already support me on Patreon. Your support means the absolute world. My question for you today is, what is your favorite ancient civilization? Let me know.
Oh, now. That is actually a very interesting theory, man. I'm a little bit impressed. I mean, all that just from dude deciding to not be hibernating for 100 years. Like, imagine what could have happened, man. That's really interesting. I still don't like the fact that there will be no Zuko or Iroh. Like, mainly Iroh. Azula, no. No, Azula, no. Damn. Now I feel tempted to like read Avatar, The Last Airbender comics, just to know what happens afterwards. The fact that the sequel wasn't about this, I don't understand it. Like, I got nothing against Korra, but people loved Aang and the group. People wanted to watch in TV seeing Zuko's mom. People wanted to know how Zuko could run the Fire Nation. People wanted to know how Aang would be as an adult with him and Katara, and see their kids. And they were just like, you know what? We're just gonna skip like 60 years, or like however long it was, to a whole new Avatar. I honestly would like to see a Avatar anthology series on the past Avatars, or we can do an anthology series on future Avatars. Because the next Avatar is an Earthbender, then it's a Firebender, and then it's a Airbender. I would definitely like to see miniseries like that. That's just my opinion, but my opinion don't mean much, does it? Alright, but thanks for watching, y'all. This is a long video. Apologize for that. This is GVTV signing out. Stay tuned for the next video, guys. Peace out.